Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving into one of those screenwriting terms that gets thrown around a lot but can feel frustratingly vague, the narrative through line.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Exactly. If you're working on a script, you probably heard it. You get notes saying strengthen the through line, or maybe coverage that says the focus is weak, find the through line. But what does that actually mean? For writers maybe coming from novels or plays or even just starting out, it could just sound like jargon, right? Kind of nebulous.
Totally. It feels abstract.
So our mission today is to cut through that fog. We want to define exactly what a through line is, why it's so essential, like the spine of your story, and crucially, how you actually build it page by page so your audience doesn't get lost.
And that's key. Because, the through line might sound a bit academic maybe, but its effect is super practical. It's tangible.
Right.
When a script feels, baggy or confusing, it's almost always a problem with the through line. So yeah, the goal is to make this idea a really useful tool for you.
Okay, let's start right there. The definition. If we're boiling it down, what's the clearest, most concise way to define the through line?
Okay. The through line is basically the single primary storyline that acts as the engine for your plot.
The engine.
Yeah, it's what drives everything forward. And it's always linked to your main character.
Always the protagonist.
Always. For a through line to really exist and function, you need 4 key things clearly set up and tracked throughout the script.
Okay, what up?
1, the protagonist, obviously. 2, their specific measurable story goal. What do they want? 3, the main conflict. What's the primary obstacle they face trying to get that goal? And 4, the stakes. Why does this goal matter to them? What happens if they fail?
Right.
If you can answer those 4 points in like a single sentence, you've probably found your through line.
That makes sense. Including the conflict and stakes is crucial, isn't it? Otherwise, a goal is just an item on a to-do list.
Exactly. It needs opposition and consequence to have dramatic weight.
So, if the through line is the main spine, what about complexity? What if the protagonist has maybe 2 big goals, or there are significant subplots? Doesn't that risk, weakening the spine?
That's a really important question. The through line has to be the primary force, number 1. Subplots are fine. Actually, they're often necessary.
Right, for texture.
Yeah, but they need to serve the main through line. They should either directly support the main goal, maybe complicate it, or provide some kind of thematic contrast that actually highlights the main conflict.
So they can't just wander off on their own.
No, they can't hijack the story. If your character wants goal A, but suddenly half the scenes are about achieving unrelated goal B, well, you don't have one strong through line anymore. You've got 2 competing lines, and that fractures the audience's focus. The through line is all about directing attention.
Okay, that makes sense functionally. But let's get into mechanics. Knowing what it is, that's one thing. How do we actually make sure it shows up consistently across, say, 100 pages without getting sidetracked?
Well, the secret is actually pretty simple in concept, but it needs discipline in execution.
Hard part.
Always. The through line is built by the protagonist pursuing their story goal consistently, from the inciting incident right through to the climax. Consistency. That's the magic word here.
Consistency.
Yeah. Think of it like this. There's a great analogy about dots that makes it visual.
Okay.
Imagine your whole script, maybe 100 pages, is a box. Right. Now, every single scene you write that directly deals with the main conflict. So the protagonist's pursuit, the obstacles they face, the stakes being tested, every one of those scenes is a dot inside that box.
Okay, I see. So a strong through line means lots of dots close together, creating a path.
Exactly. You've got it.
Right.
If you have a weak through line, it means there are big gaps between the dots. Long stretches where nothing happens that relates to that core pursuit, that main conflict.
The path disappears.
Right. The audience loses the connection. But if you have enough scenes, enough dots that constantly circle back to that core conflict, goal, obstacle, stakes, they form a clear, visible line. It's undeniable.
Okay, so let's take a hypothetical bad script like you mentioned. Protagonist needs to find a stolen briefcase by page 100.
Yep.
If they interview someone on Monday, but then Tuesday is 3 scenes of them, picking out new curtains, and Wednesday they argue with their neighbor about recycling bins. Those Tuesday and Wednesday scenes are not free zones, right?
Precisely. They don't advance the main pursuit. They don't escalate the main conflict related to the briefcase, and that's exactly when the audience starts to feel like the script is dragging or it's meandering. It feels baggy.
That's the noise getting in the way of the signal feeling. The signal is the briefcase hunt, but the curtain shopping is just noise.
Exactly right. And if the noise drowns out the signal, the audience stops tracking the main story. They might get confused, unsure what they're supposed to care about.
Or they might just check out.
Or they might feel the script itself doesn't know where it's going. And that lack of direction, that lack of focus, usually leads to an unsatisfying experience. Because, the stakes start to feel less important if the main character can just drop their urgent quest for, well, furniture.
Okay, so the through line is the path made by these dots, this consistent pursuit. How do the big moments, the major plot points, inciting incident, midpoint, climax fit in? Are they just big dots?
They're more than just big dots. They are critical structural pillars. If the through line is the continuous line or path, the major plot points are like the big tent poles holding up the tent.
Oh.
Or you could think of them as the armature, the underlying skeleton that gives the through line its shape over the entire story. They mark the definitive beginning, middle, and end of that primary pursuit.
Can we use an example, like Little Miss Sunshine? The source material breaks that down well.
Perfect example. The through line is the family trying to get Olive to the pageant, right? And that journey forces them to confront their own dysfunctions and maybe reconnect.
Okay, so walk us through the tent poles, the armature, on that specific path.
Right. So inciting incident, Olive finds out she has a chance to compete. That kicks off the goal.
Establishes the pursuit.
Exactly. Then the break into Act 2. The whole family reluctantly agrees and piles into that yellow VW bus. They commit to the goal, commit to the journey. The through line is officially underway.
And the dots start appearing immediately. The bus breaking down, the money issues.
Those little conflicts that make the pursuit difficult, yeah. Now jump ahead, midpoint. Grandpa dies.
Huge moment.
Massive. It's a huge emotional blow, obviously, affecting the family dynamic, the stakes. But it's also a giant practical obstacle to the goal. How do they keep going with Grandpa? It forces a major shift in how they pursue the goal.
And all the scenes between getting in the bus and Grandpa dying are those dots we talked about, the arguments, the clutch failing.
Absolutely. Constantly reinforcing the difficulty of the pursuit, the conflicts within the family, the fragility of the goal. Then the pursuit gets even rockier, leading to the low point.
Twain's breakdown.
Yeah. Dwayne discovers he's colorblind, his dream is shattered, and he refuses to go on. He stops the bus. The through line itself seems completely broken. The goal feels impossible because the family unit, the very thing sort of being tested, has just imploded.
Which sets up the turn into Act 3.
Exactly. The break into Act 3 isn't about solving Dwayne's problem, but it's Olive reaching out to him, choosing him over the pageant for a moment. And he responds by getting back on the bus.
So the core value of the through-line family connection gets reaffirmed.
Right. It's temporarily restored, allowing the pursuit of the pageant goal to resume, now with even more urgency because they're late. And finally, the climax. Olive performs her routine.
Which the crowd hates.
Totally rejects it. But the family jumps on stage with her, defending her, joining in. So the explicit goal, winning the pageant, is lost. But the implicit goal, the real stakes about family connection and acceptance, that's achieved.
Wow.
So that whole structure, inciting incident, act breaks, midpoint, climax, that's the armature. The through line is the combination of that strong armature and all those little dots, the consistent scenes of pursuit and conflict that connect those big tent poles together.
If you just had the tent poles without the connecting dots,
it would feel jerky, disconnected, like a skeleton with no muscle or connective tissue. The dots provide the flow and keep the audience invested moment to moment.
Okay, this makes the through line feel much less abstract. It's the consistent pursuit structured by the big plot points. It's actually something you can track scene by scene.
And that's why it's so crucial. It's not just theory. The through line is, fundamentally, where the main conflict lives and breathes in your script.
Right.
If you, the writer, aren't crystal clear on that path, how can you expect the audience to follow? The through line is really the roadmap you're giving them.
So for practical application,
yeah.
If your script feels slow or bloated, or maybe you're getting notes that it's confusing, the diagnostic check is to look for scenes that aren't dots.
That's usually the first place to look, yeah.
Scenes that don't advance the main pursuit or raise the stakes or introduce relevant conflict.
Exactly. Ask yourself for every scene, how does the scene push the protagonist closer to or further from their primary goal while engaging the main conflict? If a scene doesn't do that, It might be noise. 9 times out of 10, pacing problems come from spending too much time on scenes that fall outside those 4 core elements.
Yeah.
Protagonist, goal, conflict, stakes.
Okay, one last thing before we wrap up. If we accept that a weak through line means too much noise, where does that noise typically come from? What should writers be most wary of?
That's a good question. I think the most common culprits are often things that feel necessary to the writer but end up overwhelming the actual story momentum.
Like what?
Well, expensive world building is a big one, especially in sci-fi or fantasy. Spending 10 pages explaining the Galactic Senate rules before the hero has even decided to leave their home planet.
Right, info dumps.
Info dumps, yeah. Or overly complex character backstories delivered too early before we understand why they matter to the current pursuit.
So backstory that isn't active in the present story.
Precisely. These things, world building, backstory, they often feel vital to the writer for context. But for the audience, if they're not immediately actionable, if they don't directly fuel or complicate the main character's present struggle towards their goal, they just stall everything. They become noise.
So the key is balance. Deliver necessary info, but maybe weave it in as it becomes relevant to the action.
Exactly. Integrate it. Deliver it when it impacts the through line's momentum. Don't stop the story cold to explain something. A good rule of thumb might be, if you could cut this scene and the core plot, the protagonist's pursuit of the goal against the main obstacles, remains perfectly clear and logical, then that scene was probably noise.
That's a really useful, maybe slightly painful test.
It can be, but it helps clarify focus.
Okay, so a great final thought for you, the listener, to take back to your own work. What parts of your script are truly essential signal, driving that through line forward? And what parts might just be distracting noise, however interesting or well-written they feel? How can you balance providing context with maintaining that core narrative drive?
Worth thinking about.
Absolutely. Well, we hope this deep dive has helped make the narrative through line a much more tangible and practical concept for you.
Hope so.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.